Dc45 Punch Klinger, the Fist. Soul-touching and life-enhancing stories. Punch Klinger, the Fist. His nickname was the Fist, but his real name was Punch Klinger, and he was the only survivor of the Klingons, an alien civilization that had come to an end with the final stand. He had for a fact escaped from his planet just before his kind had come to an end. During his life at his planet, he had been one of the most feared fighters, a nation of fighters, in which fighting was the major business. His fist and his punch had been known to everybody, but somewhere during the course of his life, he had given up his skill and profession and had disappeared into the mountains. Nobody had understood why he had chosen the path of silence, but he knew why. During a health crisis at the peak of his career, he had spent time in an isolation chamber, and things had come up he had never thought about. Their civilization had reached its peak, but health in general was drastically going down. The new generation, of which he was a part of, refused to take care of the basic needs concerning health. He realized that everybody was fighting by refusing to take care of the simple needs, and that they were robbing and taking from nature, including from the nature of their own body. He realized the symbol of the fist, which he had thought to be a sign of strength and power, but actually was the opposite. Refusing to take care of the basic needs and just wanting to climb the ladder of external wealth, name and fame, through fighting was blocking all positive energies. It was a rebellious, destructive and aggressive way of living, and the symbol of the fist of wanting to fight for things of the world by wanting them was exactly the same. The word no, in regards to taking care of the basic needs, made one cling his hands and changing it into a fist and ready to fight when someone would try to convince you otherwise. It was energy that contracted. It was the same for wanting more and more and having to fight for that dream to be fulfilled. All became a battle of working harder, loaning money, and having to work even more, fighting with time and fighting disease. It was the fist again that was shown to fight for desires and to protect one's possessions, profession, ego, and opinion. Shortly after his revelation, Punch Klinger changed his fighting style, and instead of fighting with his fists, he fought with his hands open. And he had even more success than before, for his opponents seemed to destroy themselves. His fighting style was within no time banned, not only by the Council of Fighting Sports, but by the government as well. They didn't want people to know about this kind of power, because everything was controlled through the clinging of the hand, or in other words, the fist. He stopped fighting and gave all his possessions away and felt the freedom entering his hand and life by not having to cling his fingers at all anymore, something he had never experienced. He had started to take care of himself and discovered that nature was giving him so much and decided to go and live in the mountains. By opening one's hands, also things could come freely. He realized that his discovery could not help many others as a new law was activated. Anybody who was not busy with something holding into their hands had to have at least one hand as a fist as a symbol. It was promoted as the sign of success of their civilization, and one could be fined and even ending up in jail by disobeying the law. From a distance, he observed his fellow man destroying their planet by taking and taking. He saw his fellow man destroying their own health, family life, and basically everything. In the end, it ended up that his people divided themselves in two groups: the controllers, who were those in politics and rich business owners, and the other group, those who wanted to overrun them and wanting more power for themselves. It was on the battlefield, which was called the final stand, where Punch Klinger saw the end of his own kind. Those who had won the battle, which took a very long time, and after they had wiped out the other group, had come out of it completely tired from all the fighting, and they died from a strange disease. He continued living in the mountains and in harmony with nature, and discovered inner powers that blew his mind. He was able to see the energy flow of an open hand, which was an ongoing energy of receiving and giving, and he saw this energy circle and cycle in everything. At the moment the hand closed, everything that flows actually stopped. He was able to see into the entire universe and saw others doing the same as his people and he himself had done, but in less obvious ways. However, he saw them all being Klingons, just looking differently, for everybody was busy with the no and wanting more. He had wanted to train himself more in the open hand fighting and learning more about this incredible energy flow, but soon his time came to depart from his physical body. More connected to the eternal life, which was the core of life within him, he searched to enter a different body somewhere in the universe, and his dream was to find out more about the flow of energy. After some time looking around, he chose a planet, took a new body, and entered a family where he saw an opportunity to fulfill his quest. It was unfortunately that first his old self, which only knew about fighting, dominated for many years his life. He had an incredible flexible body, different from the one he had before, but a sign on his sacrum was the evidence of his past, and it was only in that area of his body that he was stiff. It wasn't easy for him to bend over forwards, which was the gesture of saying thank you, something he had not been able to practice as a Klingon. He had thought to receive the freedom he was seeking instantly in his new body and environment, but the old no and only wanting what he wanted kept dominating his life, which resulted in a constant fight. He couldn't understand why he had everybody on his back, and it was very frustrating because, as the fist Punch Klinger, he had been the one who called the shots in the past. He had been the most powerful Klingons. His dream and quest he had started in his former life was still dominant in a world of shadows of the past. His parents, friends, educators, and trainers had to be tough with him, as he wanted to only do what he wanted and not wanting to do what he needed to do. Luckily, at one point in his young life, he started to remember his quest and started to understand how the flow of energy worked to his advantage without having to fight. With each thought and action that was connected to a no, he saw his hand changing into a fist, and he also started to recognize the fighting fist of wanting things, and slowly but surely he was becoming a different person. He recognized that trying to control things, people and situations was a no-win situation, and each time he saw his own fist, he changed. The fist was his guide. It was not easy to give in for him, especially with a formal life background, always being the winner and in charge. But he looked for an opportunity to develop the open hand. He saw pictures of individuals meditating, holding their hands open, statues of enlightened beings with their hands wide open, and observed people practicing Tai Chi and Aikido. By others he noticed, when they were able to receive and share it with others, how easily their life was compared to being a fist and cling on. He felt that sitting in a corner to meditate was not yet for him, and also not Tai Chi and Aikido, maybe too close to the past, but he picked up playing tennis. Tennis was a no-body contact sport, and with a net in between the players. Because he was so flexible, it was very elegant how he played. But even in the beginning years, it was rather a fight than a joy and dance of energy. However, one afternoon he finally discovered the magic of the flow of energy by enjoying keeping the ball in the game, rather than sometimes not giving a darn or wanting to kill the ball. It felt like the ball just stayed between him and his coach, and this was the flow of handing the ball back. It was his breakthrough in tennis, where his pattern of resisting, rebelling, and fighting changed into persisting and keeping the ball in the game by bringing it back, and like in Aikido, where the opponent beats himself or herself. In addition, this was all done with an exhale and having even more natural powers. Those on the other side who wanted to break the flow had to pay the price, for they were fighting with their own fist again. Even when they won the match, they paid the price with their health and having to stay living in the game of fighting, which ended up with moments of victory, but mostly with frustration and defeat, and forgetting that in the end there would be always somebody else who was better. As a tennis player, he enjoyed playing every ball and became the most feared opponent on the tennis circuit. He understood that it is much easier to be in the flow than trying to break it, and it exhausted and frustrated others to the max. He loved to play and connected with the flow, and his breakthrough reflected in all other areas of his life, which became a life he had been dreaming of, a quest he succeeded in, and which brought peace inside himself. He ran into others who had discovered, or better said rediscovered, the flow of energy, but realized that most people stayed Klingons, and there was very little he could do about that, other than being an example of open hands and enjoying playing tennis with the flow. He became a tennis coach and introduced the world to a new kind of game that was based on keeping the ball in the game, and it became a sport accessible for many more individuals and which contributed to one's health rather than challenging it too much and depleting one's health. He named it Playback Ball. It was about playing together instead of playing against each other. He continued his life and went on a quest to find out more and more about the energy flow of life and the energy flow between everybody and everything. Later in his life, after having met many teachers, guides and masters regarding the subject, he finally found a teacher that brought everything together for him. From that day on, He was on an inward journey to merge back to the source. It was the life in creation that had started with giving life to all, the breath of life that had been an exhale from the source of life itself. This was the life which everybody could live with and from, but to cling on to anything from creation was impossible. All was just given, and nothing to hold on to. Punch Klinger the Fist passed on and merged back to that source of life shortly before the entire world he was living in destroyed and consumed itself. Nobody was left, like it happened before, living on the planet of the Klingons. Seemingly, when the flow of life disappears, and inhabitants of a country, empire, and this time again a complete nation, just take and take, consume, compare, compete, and even fight and try to hold on and control the things that do not belong to them in the first place, they themselves destroy themselves and will have to vanish. What the story could bring us. We all came without anything, and one day we will go without anything. Life is about receiving and giving, a constant flow of things coming and going. There is nothing to hold on to or to control. All is a momentary gift. Most of us think that we have to fight for almost everything and the need to defend it. But this belief is connected to thinking that others have powers in our personal story of life. When we do not believe that we ourselves or God wrote our perfect book of life, we stay victims. Victims either stay defeated, the victims, complaining, blaming and pointing, or fighting, but both are against the flow of life and will have no peace, and so life stays a battle, destruction and a battlefield.